Hostiles approaching. Warning. Sentinel drones activated.
No Man's Sky. Of all the games we've done on this channel, it's one of the hardest ones to figure out when to review.
Mm-hmm. Do you review it on the billionth planet, on the trillionth planet? Like, when do you finally settle down and say that you've got a good impression of this game?
Yeah, and even before both of us played this game, we actually had somewhat different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
You were more in the dark about what this game was about. You saw the main trailers, you got little snippets of information. Compared to me, however, I was sitting there poring over every single interview prior to release. I was really building the hype for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So we came at it from pretty different angles. Do you want to start off? What do you think? Where did you end up?
I just know that I played like at least 20-30 hours of the game, and it's just been such a tranquil experience overall. Really, overall, it's like as the developer I think described it once, it's a very chill game, and it's kind of a game that allows you to create your own goals as you go along. It's partially a survival game, but not a particularly overbearing one. You're running low on fuel every now and again, so you just mine for some plutonium for 2 seconds, and then you go and you look for upgrades, and you look for the resources that you need to get the things that you want to make the experience more enjoyable. It's kind of it's almost like a self-improvement simulator in space.
Yeah, and the aimlessness of it can feel like its biggest detriment sometimes. I could see it very easily being extremely boring. Depending on the kind of person you are. If you want to be put in a certain direction and feel like that direction is going to lead to a reward that's validating your journey, I don't know that this is the game for you. For example, one of the main treks that you can go across, because there's a few choices that you can make. You can decide to go to the center of the whole galaxy, right? You can just freeform fly around wherever you want, or you can follow this Atlas path. I think one of the things that's interesting about that path is when you finish that path, there is a huge amount of ambiguity. The actual wording of the Atlas path as you go to each of these Atlas stations, it implies a sense of meaninglessness, and like it talks directly about going on a journey and then feeling like there's no point, and then even finishing the journey and feeling like there's no point. And I think that could be a very discouraging feeling, and I think that's reflected in how the game actually feels. You will go from planet to planet to planet, star system to star system. You never know what it's going to look like or what's going to be there. You have a basic sense of like what kind of resources are going to be there, but the overarching point is kind of non-existent. And some of there's a lot of criticism to be made about the mechanics of the game, right? So you're collecting resources, you're using those resources to fix up your ship or your exosuit, like maintaining yourself, right? That's the survival element. On paper and in execution, it's all fairly straightforward, right? The tree of resources is not too extensive, and that loop does not evolve too much over the span of the game, right? And so I think if you go into this game and you're looking for mechanics, I think you're going to be exceedingly disappointed. However, if you go into this game and you're looking for discovery and exploration, then the fact that the mechanics are simplistic is in service of that. And what I mean by that is, prior to this game, when I was watching a lot of these interviews with Sean Murray, and he was talking about his vision for the game, the mechanical parts, the parts where he was talking about the specifics of features and different aspects that were supposed to be within the game, to me felt always superseded by the vision. And the vision was very straightforward. It was, you were going to be able to be on a planet, fly up into the stars, and have a limitless potential choice of where you want to go. And to me, growing up in the time that I grew up with the kind of games that were available, that was a fantasy of childhood. And I think that this game pulls that off like 100%. And that is one of those things where it's like either you want that fantasy to be fulfilled or you want to just play another game. And I think if you want a game, this No Man's Sky absolutely fails as a game. I'm talking mechanic level, right? I mean, we can agree. Like the mechanics, the loop is pretty. It's almost like a like you're gambling, like you're putting nickels into a machine,
Right.
and you just like each planet is like, is this going to be the good planet? Is this gonna? And it's sort of like this loop of like potential reward, right? And if you play it like that, the loop is extremely simple. But if you have this idea that no, I'm going to go to these planets, not so much worried about, oh, is this resource? Is it going to have resources that are going to fuel my endeavor to get to the center, my endeavor to get to the Atlas path or whatever? If your idea is I'm going to go to this planet because the dream of being able to just go there, of having something be beautiful for its own sake, and actually just wandering through that world and appreciating it for what it is.
It's to be expected, I think, when you find out that a game like this is procedurally generated, that the loop of actually discovering worlds is probably going to be more tranquil than exciting. Like the transition from being in space to being on the planet to being in space again. Like these are the moments really that were important in my playthrough of the game. It always seemed like a game with a lot of style and a lot of spacey, trippy mood.
And that isn't to say that there isn't a big container for all of that experience. Because, I said that the loop of the gameplay mechanics is super simple because it is. However, there are some factors in the game that I do think allow you to have that tranquil experience and that sense of wonder and discovery, while also being wrapped up in mechanics if you want them to kind of elevate your experience. So I'll give there's two examples of that, right? The smaller one, but I think is super useful, is there are multiple trees of experience to be gained, right? You have an exosuit that has blueprints to collect as well as slots to gain, right? Same with your ship, same with your weapon, and same with the various blueprints of products and technology that you can build, right? So all of those become separate tiers that you can follow. And as simple as the loop to move up in those tiers is, the act of actually modifying your character and customizing them throughout the many, many, many hours that you play is a nice little carrot at the end of a stick. But that to me is not what carried me. What carried me through the game was the second most important carrot on the stick, which is the lore. And it's getting more and more engaging as it goes along. And this touches on what we talked about, the Atlas path being somewhat disappointing, or almost exclusively disappointing, almost actively disappointing. What's interesting about that is I think the real satisfying path, if you want satisfaction, actually comes from the freeform path, which is not to focus on the center or on the Atlas, but actually to take your sweet time on planets and read all of the monoliths and learn all of the language and go through all of those outposts, which is what I've been doing. And you learn about this Korvax convergence that happened where they started to meld their minds together, and then you hear about the Gek who became these like conquerors who took over the Korvax because they had melded their minds or sacrificed themselves to the Echo, as they call it. And then the Gek start taking over and ruling over them, but then some of the Gek warriors start to succumb to this idea of like this uniform mind. And so it's this whole history that you start learning. And then you learn about the Viking who worshipped this Atlas god, which is the same Atlas quote-unquote god that influenced the Korvax to want to converge in the first place. And it all revolves around this Atlas and this idea of if their universe is digital or not, and what does that mean in regards to meaning. It's like this whole crazy series of like really interesting lore, and it's given to you completely non-linearly. And I've seen a bit of some of the conversation around this game, and it's shocking to me that this isn't the top of what people are talking about, because I find the lore the most engaging thing about this game. It's giving me a completely non-linear story that I have to pay a crap ton of attention to, and it's continuously filling itself, and it's all about this concept of these different races trying to find meaning to their lives, and then you as a character trying to find meaning to your own, right?
Yeah, you're just alone in an ocean of kind of just places to be, and you can go to all these places, and you can just kind of choose to do things, and there's no like side quest menu. You know, you don't like make a waypoint appear that shows you your next objective. You know, you decide it all on your own. So in the middle of making all those decisions, it makes a lot of sense that there would be, what does all this mean? Why am I doing this? You know, I don't know. I think it's very coherent that way, and I think this game doesn't just do something that's a little different in the sense that it's maybe a little quieter than most games. It's also like it does something special. I think I think it tackles those questions in a way that I've never seen, because I've never seen a game that's so vast to really vast enough to demonstrate how small you are.
And I do feel that No Man's Sky, for all the ways that it fails on a mechanical loop level, it at least tries to be something I've never experienced before. And I like that exists. But I could also see why you could hate this. Like, I totally get why you can hate this game.
But for the sake of the art form,
yeah,
it's good that it exists, because like video games have been pigeonholed so much, and by limiting yourself to this expectation that every game is going to be super entertaining, that like whenever you see a feature you think, oh, I bet when I play that it's going to be so fun. I bet when I go into space it's going to be like Mass Effect. I bet when I go onto the ground it's going to be like Fallout. I bet when I mine resources it's going to be like Minecraft. I understand those expectations, but in a way that is a form of childlike perception that is rather than curiosity. It's like we insist that games are going to be entertaining when they could be so many of the other vast things that movies and books can be. I felt like I wanted to be where I was, and I also wanted to explore. That's the interesting balance that I think it had for me. Like I knew that I had goals in mind, but I also just continually was just amazed, like looking at the skyline and stuff, and just feeling it every time that I would like launch into the atmosphere. Like it's a game that keeps you very present without keeping you constantly worried about death.
For me, I think a lot of what you just said, 100% on my end. It was this feeling of appreciation across the board as I was going through, like literally like looking at the combinations of colors, how they all follow color theory no matter what kind of algorithm they use. How each of the landscapes mold together to be somewhat eerie and a little off and a little not quite Earth-like, and how the fact that it's all part of an algorithm that they could not guarantee that it was all going to look good, and the fact that it was just put out there and that I get to run through that and have limitless chances to discover. I love it. I find it so incredibly relaxing. And I love a lot of games, man. Like I play, like we're going to play Deus Ex, and we're probably going to love the crap out of Deus Ex. We're going to, we played so many different things. It's really nice though to play something that is so focused on being experienced